Hello. Today we're going to talk about nonfiction text structures, and I'm going to read you this sample op-ed piece from the Learning Network of the New York Times, and then I'll do some thinking aloud about how this writer structured their piece. This Land Was Made for You and Me by Nicole Tian. Welcome home, the United States Custom Agent smiles at me, handing me my deep blue passport, embossed with a golden eagle. America is my home, where I can celebrate Lunar New Year and drive up to San Francisco 5 months later to cheer with strangers, united under fireworks on the 4th of July. Picture an American on Independence Day. Picture a Chinese. Now picture a girl, a product of these two cultures, smiling so wide her cheeks hurt as the night rumbles awake. The dark hides her face and skin tone. Her silhouette against the sky outlines the features of a patriot. Alrighty, I'm going to pause right here. You'll notice I marked up quite a bit of things in those first two paragraphs, and I didn't mark everything that I could see or hear or imagine. So there's a lot of imagery in these first two paragraphs, which signals that this writer is opening with description. So that's the organizational structure used at the beginning to hook the reader here. So let's go on to paragraphs 3 and 4. Now, the novel SARS-CoV-2 virus has transformed part of my identity into a slur. My own president designated the pandemic as the Chinese virus, a moniker that implicates a whole culture and its descendants, inviting fear and offering up Asian Americans as easy targets. Inflammatory language leads to violent actions. Reports of bigotry against Asian Americans recently spiked. Clearly, this violence is misguided. The viruses are blind to ethnicity. Not every Chinese American has COVID-19, and not everyone who's tested positive is of Chinese descent. One thing I'm noticing is how strong the writer is in terms of active verbs. From the night rumbling awake to the dark hiding her face. And in these two paragraphs, those strong verbs continue, but they also link to cause and effect structure, because this writer is saying how the president's language led to discrimination against Asian Americans around the COVID virus. So these two structures, or these two paragraphs, are cause and effect here, showing a progression of effects. To confront the coronavirus and alienation, see, that's the effect of what had happened before, the Chinese American community has gone to great lengths to mobilize in slowing the virus's spread. However, my community's goodwill is misunderstood by some as a plea to be accepted as American, a submissive gesture from the model minority to please the system that is constructed against us. Indeed, prominent members like former Democratic presidential candidate Andrew Yang have called upon Chinese Americans to increase their efforts at patriotism to escape stigma. According to his argument, Asian Americans must volunteer vigorously, wave the flag more enthusiastically, and spin their tale into one of die-hard patriotism to prove their rights for being in this country. All right, I want to mark a couple things here, and let me pick a different highlighter color. So we've got Andrew Yang, and then you'll notice these transitions, however, indeed. So this writer is connecting ideas by using those transitions, but also he's going to start using some repetition here. And the writer's acknowledging Yang's side of the alienation of Chinese Americans, but you should be getting a sense that the writer doesn't really agree with Yang's argument. So this paragraph is order in sequence, and we're going to get another taste of the sequence here as it continues in paragraph 6. Novelist Toni Morrison pointed out the truth of this strained effort this strained effort to prove one's Americanness, commenting, "In this country, American means white. Everybody else has to hyphenate." Yang reinforces the idea that hyphenation, using a definition to show what Yang means. And the writer's pitting Toni Morrison's ideas around strained efforts against Yang's kind of, it's time to go out and be patriotic. Does that make sense here? So that finishes up the order and sequence section. Op-ed, some imagery and description, cause and effect, a nice order and sequence as the writer kind of acknowledges the other side of the argument that means not fully American and connotes a degree of separation from being American. So in the last part of that paragraph, the peril of social division is not just about our president and politicians, literacy and decency. So notice this is connecting back to the writer's claim, which is centered around the peril of social division. As citizens of this country, we, born here or naturalized, are obligated to join the collective effort to stop the virus. It is also our responsibility to call out another form of pathogens in our systems and structures. The use of Chinese virus is rooted in ethnocentrism and racism, which not only undermines our civility, but also comes at a cost to human lives. You and I are both Americans, featured differently but committed equally to the well-being of our country. Picture Americans, you and I. All right, let me talk a little bit about this ending. So there's a nice compare and contrast happening here in paragraph 7, comparing the writer, or American Chinese, to naturalized or other citizens of America. And the writer shifts into this inclusive we and our. So we want to take note of that comparison happening. The writer also is comparing, the problem of social division to, being unified as a country. So we can't allow ethnocentrism and racism to divide us as a country. Now, in the end, the writer backs away from we and our and separates the two people, again, or the two personas in the piece. You and I are both Americans. Love how this part is structured. Featured differently, committed equally. Do you see that right there? Just that descriptive phrase. And what the writer's done is created some parallel structure. That means that both words are in the same format. So you've got the ed verb, with the adjective, just as a descriptive piece. Very well balanced, that ending. And then notice the circle back to the picture this repetition of the opening. And this order and sequence kind of closes out the piece in a very satisfying way. So those are the structures of the created here. Compare and contrast, and then some more order and sequence at the end. When we think about these common text structures, these are probably the 5 most common text structures. I think that you probably noticed key words. So, however, indeed, leads. I could scroll back through and look for some of the keywords that signal each of the structures. You've got imagery and description. You can have sequence words, of course, in order and sequence. But I will leave that to you. So best of luck as you organize your op-ed piece, and I will see you in class.